The piercing shriek of a commercial security alarm was a jagged knife tearing through the quiet, pre-dawn stillness of Maple Street. It was the kind of sound that made lights flick on in neighboring houses and hearts beat a little faster. For Officer Frank Brody, a veteran cop whose optimism had been sandblasted away by 20 years on the force, it was the familiar song of another burglary. He gunned the engine of his cruiser, his younger partner, Officer Chen, riding silently beside him. The alarm was coming from Chen's Gems, a small, bespoke jewelry store owned by old Mr. Chen, a neighborhood institution. As they pulled up, they saw the front glass door was slightly ajar. Brody drew his weapon, motioning for Chen to cover the back. He moved with practiced, weary efficiency, his mind already writing the report, another smash and grab, another statistic. He pushed the door open and entered, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The glass display cases were intact, but the main vault at the back of the store stood open. And in the middle of the room, illuminated by the flashing red lights of the alarm panel, stood a figure. It was a young black kid, couldn't be older than 16 or 17, dressed in a dark hoodie and jeans. He was frozen like a deer in headlights, and in his hands, he clutched a velvet jeweler's bag, bulging with what could only be high-end merchandise. Standing near him, looking dazed and confused, was old Mr. Chen himself, frail and clad in pajamas. To Brody, the scene was an open-and-shut case, a tragedy in two parts, a young predator and his elderly victim. Police! Drop the bag and get on the ground. Now! Brody's voice was a thunderclap in the small store. The young man, whose name was Caleb, looked from the bag to Brody, his eyes wide with panic. Officer, wait, it's not what it looks like. I can explain. I'll bet you can, Brody sneered, advancing into the room. Explain it from the floor. On your face. Hands behind your back. Mr. Chen, a man in his late 80s with kind eyes now clouded by dementia, shuffled forward. We're going on a trip, he mumbled, reaching a trembling hand towards Caleb. Stay back, Mr. Chen. Brody commanded, interpreting the old man's confusion as fear. We've got him. He can't hurt you anymore. He saw Caleb as a threat, a kid manipulating a vulnerable old man. Caleb, seeing there was no use arguing, carefully placed the heavy bag on the floor and slowly got on his knees, then onto the ground as instructed. The cold of the tile floor seeped through his jeans. He heard the click of handcuffs and felt the cold steel bite into his wrists as Brody roughly secured them. You have the right to remain silent, Brody began, reciting the words with a bored, detached tone as he hauled Caleb to his feet. So, what's the story, kid? You break in and get caught by the owner? Or did you force him to open the vault for you? Neither, Caleb said, his voice shaking slightly. I wasn't robbing him. I was helping him. My name is Caleb. I live next door. He has dementia, sometimes he gets confused at night. Brody laughed, a short, humorless bark. Oh, that's a new one. The Good Samaritan thief. You think I'm an idiot? You're a 16-year-old kid found in a jewelry store at 3 a.m. holding a bag of diamonds with the owner. You tell me what that looks like. I have a key, Caleb insisted, desperate now. His daughter, Alani, she gave it to me for emergencies. For when he does this. The alarm must have tripped by accident. Please, just call her. Her number is on a card in my wallet. Sure it is, Brody said, patting Caleb down and pulling out his wallet. He saw school ID and a few dollars. He ignored the small business card with Alani's name on it, stuffing the wallet into an evidence bag. We'll check your story. Down at the station. Officer Chen re-entered from the back, his weapon holstered. All clear back here, Frank. His eyes fell on Caleb in cuffs, then on Mr. Chen, who was now trying to methodically polish a display case with the sleeve of his pajama top. Chen's brow furrowed. He was younger, newer to the force, and something about the scene felt off. "Sir," Officer Chen said quietly to Brody, "maybe we should listen to the kid. Mr. Chen doesn't seem right. He's an elderly victim of a home invasion. Of course he's not right." Brody snapped, his authority challenged. "This is a textbook case. Now get him in the car. I'll stay here with Mr. Chen and wait for his daughter to show up and give a statement." He looked at Caleb with utter contempt. "You're going away for a long time, kid. Preying on old men. It's disgusting." The ride to the precinct was a blur of shame and terror for Caleb. He tried to explain again, but Officer Chen was quiet, driving, clearly unwilling to cross his senior partner. At the station, Caleb was processed like a common criminal. Fingerprinted, photographed, and placed in a cold, concrete holding cell. The heavy door slammed shut, the sound echoing his own despair. He sat on the hard bench, his head in his hands. He was a good kid. He got good grades. He volunteered at the animal shelter. He looked after Mr. Chen whenever he could, mowing his lawn, carrying his groceries, and, for the past few months, gently guiding him home when his mind began to wander. Alani, Mr. Chen's daughter, was a busy corporate lawyer who lived an hour away. She'd come to rely on Caleb, trusting him with the well-being of her beloved father. She called him her dad's guardian angel. And now, he was being treated like a monster. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had helped Mr. Chen plant roses just last spring, and saw them as the police saw them, the hands of a thief. He felt a profound sense of hopelessness. They wouldn't believe him. Who would believe a black kid from the other side of the tracks over the word of a veteran cop? The truth, he feared, wouldn't be enough to save him. Back at the jewelry store, Brody waited. He had called in the burglary, and the report was already filed. He was the hero cop who'd caught the bad guy red-handed. He was feeling pretty good about himself. After about 45 minutes, a sleek, expensive car pulled up. A woman got out. She was Asian, in her late 30s, dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, her face etched with worry. This was Alani Chen. "Officer, thank you for coming," she said, rushing towards him. "My neighbor called me. Is my father all right? Did he wander off again?" Brody puffed out his chest. "He's fine, ma'am. A little shaken up, but I caught the perpetrator who broke in. A young black kid. He's already in custody." Alani stopped dead. She stared at Brody, her expression shifting from worry to utter confusion, and then to a dawning, horrified realization. A young black kid? You mean Caleb?" "If that's his name," Brody said dismissively. "Caught him holding a bag of your father's jewelry. Tried to spin some crazy story about helping him." Alani's face, which had been pale with worry, now flushed with a furious, protective anger. "Officer," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Where is Caleb right now?" Brody blinked, taken aback by her tone. "He's at the precinct. Being booked for felony burglary and elder abuse." Alani pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "I am Alani Chen. I am a senior partner at the law firm of Sterling, Thorne, and Associates. I am also my father's legal guardian and the owner of this property. The young man you have arrested, Caleb, was not robbing this store. He was here at my explicit request and with my full authority." She held up her phone, showing Brody a text chain. "Here is the emergency protocol text I sent him 20 minutes before your arrival, asking him to check on my father after my father's caretaker called me in a panic. Here's the alarm code I gave him. And here," she said, her voice dripping with ice, "is my number, which I assume you found on a card in his wallet and chose to ignore." Brody's smug confidence began to crumble. He stared at the phone, then at Alani's furious face. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. "Ma'am, the situation, he had the merchandise." Because my father, who has severe dementia, was having an episode and thought he was packing for a trip to the moon. Alani shot back, her voice rising. Caleb was securing my property and trying to get my father home safely, just as I've asked him to do half a dozen times before. You didn't catch a thief, officer. You arrested a hero. You arrested a child who was protecting my family. She took a deep breath, her lawyer mode fully engaged. You are now facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit for wrongful arrest, false imprisonment, defamation, and emotional distress to a minor. And I will personally be filing a complaint with the Civilian Oversight Board that will end your career. Now, take me to my father. Then, take me to Caleb. Brody stood frozen on the sidewalk, the entire narrative of his heroic bust shattering around him. The truth was about to come out. And it was nothing like the story he had written. Officer Brody felt a cold dread creep up his spine, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his rookie years. Alani Chin stood before him, not just as a property owner, but as a high-powered lawyer whose eyes promised a storm of legal retribution. Her phone, held up like a weapon, contained the evidence of his catastrophic misjudgment. The entire foundation of his heroic arrest was crumbling into dust. Now, Alani repeated, her voice cutting through his stunned silence, you will take me to my father. Then, you will take me to Caleb. In that order. Brody, stripped of his bravado, could only nod mutely. He led Alani into the store where her father, Mr. Chen, was now happily rearranging a tray of zirconia rings, humming a tune from his youth. The sight brought tears to Alani's eyes. She rushed to his side, speaking to him in a gentle, soothing tone, her fury momentarily replaced by filial love. After ensuring her father was calm and in the care of another officer she trusted, the younger, visibly relieved Officer Chen, she turned back to Brody, her expression once again hardening to steel. The precinct, she commanded. Now. The drive to the 22nd precinct was thick with a tense, suffocating silence. When they arrived, Alani strode through the doors as if she owned the building, her heels clicking in angry rhythm on the linoleum floor. She approached the front desk where a bored-looking sergeant sat. I am here to see Caleb Johnson, who was brought in approximately 2 hours ago by Officer Brody, Alani stated, her voice clear and resonant. I am his legal counsel. The desk sergeant looked from her to a shamefaced Brody. He's in a holding cell. Being processed for felony burglary. He is being processed for nothing, Alani countered, placing her hands flat on the high counter. He is a minor who has been wrongfully arrested, and he is the key witness in the internal affairs complaint I am about to file against this officer. She pointed a single, perfectly manicured finger at Brody. I want him released into my custody immediately. The sergeant scoffed. Ma'am, it doesn't work that way. We have an officer's sworn statement, a suspect caught at the scene of a crime, and a bag full of stolen merchandise. He's not going anywhere until his arraignment. Is that so? Alani's voice was dangerously sweet. Let's review the facts, shall we? Your officer arrested a child who had expressed permission to be on the premises. He ignored evidence presented at the scene, namely, my contact information. He failed to follow protocol regarding a minor's right to contact a guardian. And he did so based on a prejudiced snap judgment. She leaned in. That is a textbook violation of civil rights under color of law. That's not a departmental complaint, Sergeant. That's a federal lawsuit. Brody, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up, trying to save himself. She's lying. The kid was preying on her father. He was manipulating a confused old man. Alani turned to face him, a look of utter disgust on her face. Caleb has been looking after my father for over a year. He helps him with his garden. He makes sure he eats lunch. He sits with him and listens to his stories about the war, stories I've heard 1,000 times. He does this not for money, but because he has a good heart. A heart you wouldn't recognize if it was sitting on your desk. Her gaze swept back to the sergeant. You want proof? Or do you want to wait for the discovery phase of the lawsuit? The sergeant, seeing the fire in her eyes and the utter panic on Brody's face, made a calculated decision. What kind of proof are we talking about? I'm glad you asked, Alani said. She took out her phone again and connected it to the large monitor in the station's reception area. I was worried about my father's episodes getting worse, so a few weeks ago, I had a small, motion-activated security camera installed inside the store. A nanny cam, if you will. It uploads directly to a cloud server. She tapped the screen. A video file loaded. The grainy, black and white footage showed the interior of the jewelry store. The timestamp confirmed the time, just before the alarm was tripped. The video showed Mr. Chen, alone, unlocking the vault. It showed him pulling out a velvet bag and beginning to fill it with necklaces and rings, muttering to himself about a long journey. He then walked towards the front door, disarming the alarm incorrectly and triggering it. A few minutes later, the footage showed Caleb entering the store. He approached Mr. Chen not with menace, but with a gentle, calming demeanor. Mr. Chen, his voice could be heard on the audio, "It's okay. It's Caleb. Let's go home. It's late." He was seen gently taking the bag from the old man. "Here, let me hold this for you, it's heavy. We need to keep your treasures safe." He was carefully placing the bag on a counter when the flashing lights of Brody's cruiser appeared through the front door. The video played on, showing Brody's aggressive entry, his immediate assumption of guilt, his refusal to listen to Caleb's explanation. It showed everything. The bullpen of the police station had fallen silent. Every officer on duty had stopped to watch the monitor. The evidence was not just compelling, it was absolute. It was a complete and total refutation of Brody's report and a stark vindication of Caleb's innocence. The desk sergeant looked at Brody, his face a grim mask of anger and embarrassment. "Brody. My office. Now." To another officer, he said, "Get the kid out of the holding cell. Get him a soda. Apologize to him. And process his release paperwork immediately." Caleb was sitting in the cold silence of his cell when the door clanged open. It wasn't a guard coming to move him, it was the desk sergeant himself. The man's face was humbled. "Son," the sergeant said, his voice heavy with resignation. "There's been a terrible mistake. You're free to go. We are so sorry." Walking out into the main station was a surreal experience. The officers who had looked at him with such contempt just hours before now couldn't meet his eyes. He saw Brody being escorted into the captain's office, his career clearly over. And then he saw her. Alani, running towards him, her professional composure gone, replaced by profound relief. She threw her arms around him. "Caleb. I am so sorry. Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay," Caleb whispered, the relief so overwhelming he felt lightheaded. "I was just really scared." "I know," she said, pulling back to look at him. "You were so brave. You did everything right." Their reunion was interrupted by a gentle touch on Caleb's arm. He turned to see Mr. Chen, his eyes clearer now than they had been all night. He looked at Caleb, then at Alani, and a flicker of understanding crossed his face. He reached out and patted Caleb's cheek. "My boy," he said softly. "My good boy. The Diamond Keeper." The phrase, born of his confused state, was somehow perfect. It was the truth. Caleb hadn't been a thief, he had been the keeper, the guardian of what was most precious. The official apology from the police department was swift and public. Officer Brody was suspended pending a full investigation, which Alani would personally oversee, ensuring it was not swept under the rug. He would never wear a badge again. The city, facing an unwinnable lawsuit, agreed to a settlement that included a significant contribution to the community arts program Caleb was a part of, and the implementation of a new training protocol on dealing with individuals with dementia and cognitive disabilities. But for Caleb, the victory wasn't in the settlement or in Brody's downfall. It was in the quiet moment a few days later, sitting in Mr. Chen's sunny garden. He was helping the old man plant new roses, his hands, once cuffed and declared the hands of a criminal, now gently tending to new life. Alani sat on the porch, watching them with a warm smile, a pot of fresh lemonade on the table beside her. The alarm, the cuffs, the cold fear of the holding cell, they were all still there, echoes in the back of his mind. But they were drowned out by the gentle sound of Mr. Chen humming his old tunes, by the warmth of the sun on his face, and by the quiet, unshakable knowledge that he had done the right thing. He had been the keeper. And in a world so quick to judge, he had been saved by a truth that was, in the end, as clear and brilliant as any diamond.